The stock market is absolutely on fire right now, and it's all being driven by one massive idea, that artificial intelligence is about to change, well, everything. But behind all that hype, are we maybe missing the fine print? In this explainer, we're going to put on our detective hats and go on a forensic investigation. We're digging into the footnotes of the AI boom to see if the foundation is really as solid as everyone thinks it is. You hear this everywhere, right? Financial statements? Fundamentals? Who cares? The story is just too good. The story is that AI is fundamentally reshaping our world, and you're either on the train or you're getting left at the station. In this brand new era, the old numbers, they just don't matter. But doesn't this feeling seem kind of familiar? This idea that some new technology is so revolutionary that all the old rules just get thrown out the window. Think back to the year 2000. Companies like Nortel and Cisco were building the very infrastructure of the internet. They were changing the world, and yet a lot of those high-flying companies don't even exist today. So what, if anything, is actually different this time around? So let's just take a snapshot of the scene today. We've got stock markets hitting all-time highs. The narrative around AI is so powerful, it feels completely and totally unstoppable. Investors are more optimistic than they've been in years, and that feeling, that euphoria, is shaping the entire financial world. But here's where things get a little weird. There's this massive disconnect. While everyone is incredibly optimistic, the things that usually flash red for danger are totally silent. Take the high-yield bond spread, for example. It's basically the extra interest you get for lending to riskier companies. Right now, it's near an all-time low. The market is effectively shouting that there's no risk out there. And if history has taught us anything, it's that the moment everyone thinks there's no risk, that's exactly when you should be paying attention. So to figure out what might be lurking just beneath the surface, we need a guide. We need a detective, someone who ignores the splashy headlines and goes straight to the fine print, to the one place most of us never, ever look, the footnotes. And our detective for this case is a guy named Anthony Silipodi. He's a forensic accountant, and he has spent decades of his life reading the things companies really don't want you to see. He's the guy who famously called the collapse of Nortel way before anyone else saw it coming, all because he spotted the warning signs hidden deep inside their financial statements. He is the perfect person for this job. And his whole guiding principle is actually pretty simple, but it's also incredibly profound. He says it's not enough to just find the numbers. You need the experience, the judgment, to understand the story those numbers are trying to tell you. And that's a skill you can only build after decades of watching these corporate dramas play out, over and over again from boom all the way to bust. So to understand the risks we're all facing today, our detective goes back to the cold cases, the huge financial blow-ups of the past. Why? Because while the technology always changes, human behavior and a lot of the accounting tricks, they tend to stay exactly the same. You remember Enron, right? Their big secret was hiding mountains of debt off balance sheet. These were basically risks that would only get triggered if something bad happened, like their stock price falling. They weren't listed on the main books as a liability, just kind of vaguely mentioned in the notes. And then, when the market turned, bam, all those hidden risks blew up and the whole company just imploded. Okay, now let's go back to Nortel. They had this other really clever trick called vendor financing. To make their sales numbers look amazing, they would literally lend money to their own customers. And what would those customers do? They'd turn right around and use that exact same money to buy products from Nortel. On paper, it looked like business was booming, but in reality, it was just Nortel paying itself. Okay, so fast forward to today. Are you seeing a pattern here? We're seeing a very similar circular flow of money. Tech giants like NVIDIA and Microsoft are investing hundreds of millions of dollars into AI startups. And then those startups immediately turn around and use that very same money to buy chips from NVIDIA and cloud services from Microsoft. It's a perfect closed loop. Now, this kind of circular financing makes the whole AI ecosystem look incredibly strong, totally self-sustaining. The sales numbers look absolutely fantastic, but it's also a very fragile system. Just like what happened with Nortel, when the market eventually wobbles and that outside funding starts to dry up, the whole thing can become incredibly vulnerable. The real question is, what happens when the music finally stops? But hold on, I know what you might be thinking. Isn't this time different because we have AI now, right? We have these incredibly powerful new tools that can scan millions of documents in seconds. Surely our own AI can just spot these risks for us. So, can AI be our new footnote detective? Can it connect all the dots and warn us about the next Nortel or the next Enron? Well, the answer, as it turns out, is a lot more complicated than you'd think. And in fact, relying too much on AI might actually be making the problem even worse. Scullapodi uses this perfect analogy. He says AI is like a tool that can instantly search 1,000,000 cookbooks and find every single mention of the word salt. That's information, and it's amazing. But an experienced chef, they can taste a dish and know not only that it needs salt, but why it tastes wrong and exactly what else it needs to be perfect. That's judgment. AI is incredible at finding data, but it can't, not yet anyway, replicate decades of hard-won human experience. So, when you boil it all down, AI is a game-changing tool for speeding up the search for information. No doubt about it. But it still lacks that crucial context and seasoned judgment to see the hidden connections between all the data points. It can find the words on the page, but it still takes a human detective to understand the story that those words are telling. All right, so if we can't just plug in an AI and have it solve everything, how do we spot these risks ourselves? Let's open up the toolkit. It's not about looking for simple red flags, but about understanding a much more nuanced three-stage process. First, you absolutely have to understand the business and the world it operates in. Second, you look for what Scullapodi calls flammable items, and notice he doesn't say red flags. For example, a startup having negative cash flow isn't automatically bad if they're investing in huge growth. It's just flammable. And that brings us to the third and final step. You look for a spark, a catalyst. That spark could be anything, a new competitor, rising interest rates. That's the thing that can turn a flammable item into a full-blown inferno. So let's quickly run through the playbook. Rule 1. The goal isn't to avoid all risk. That's impossible. It's to avoid embarrassing, catastrophic loss. Rule 2. Read the footnotes first, before anything else. They tell you the story behind the numbers. 3. Verify everything management tells you. Don't just trust them blindly. But maybe the most important rule of all is this. Remember that a rising stock price creates a positive story, not the other way around. People get really good at finding reasons to justify a price that's already gone to the moon. And all of this leaves us with one final, really powerful thought. All this stuff, the circular financing, the off-balance sheet risks, the weird metrics, in a roaring bull market, none of it seems to matter. The story is just too compelling. But these things have a funny way of suddenly mattering. And when they finally do, they tend to matter a whole lot, all at once. So the question we have to ask ourselves is, will we be reading the footnotes when that time comes?